Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back to episode 31 of the Snarp Fangle Podcast. I am your host, Jake Metzger, along with my co-host, David Reed. Your name will live forever. Fangles owe you everything to you. Rawr. How you doing, David?
After that, I don't know anymore. I feel like I've drifted away from reality.
Once we get through the second movie in this podcast, you will understand, audience, what that reference was in too. And speaking of references and comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas, and random facts about porpoises, please direct all of them to snarpfanglepod@gmail.com. It's before we get to a Patreon, which we probably will eventually do, but we're talking like down the road.
That's some future times.
Some future
right
times. There. Yeah, we're just chilling out, enjoying ourselves, getting some YouTube editing experience. David actually showed me how to edit some of the audio, which was fun. I appreciate that, David. And he does a lot of hard work, ladies and gentlemen. But kind of like sitting through some of the movies we had to watch today. Let me tell you. Whew.
Oh yeah, that was some work.
It was some work, let me tell you. So anyway, let's get on and discuss what today's topic is, David. Today we're talking about two unconventional war films in our two-film podcast series. So just so the audience knows, our first episode was about mental health. We talked about Shutter Island and Stay. The second one we did was about... Oh, dang, David, what was it about, the second one we did?
The second one
was Click and Colossal.
Yeah, it was two films with a big tonal shift.
Two films with a big tonal shift, Click and Colossal. And today we have two films that we are going to regale you with today. The first being War Dogs, and the second being the being the incredible Mr. Limpet from 1964. Oh man. So anyway, David, today I kind of want to jump right into War Dogs. Because we'll do War Dogs like we usually do when we review some of this stuff and we go through the plot and the things we liked, the disliked, all that kind of jazz. So we're gonna go through War Dogs like we normally would, and then I have something special written up for Mr. Limpet, if that's all right with you. What do you think?
Works for me.
All right, let's do it. So War Dogs, released in 2016, directed by Todd Phillips. And if that name sounds familiar, that's because it might be to you, because he directed the Hangover trilogy and he also did Joker as well as this year's second Joker, which is Joker de la Feu. I don't know, it's some French name, but it's got Lady Gaga's Harley Quinn, so with music in it, so it's gonna be good. I mean, it has to be, right?
Let's not count our chickens before they're hatched.
Yeah. Well, I'm really scared about that film, but moving on. I'm just scared I don't know what it's going to be like. But anyway, so the budget for War Dogs was $40 million, actually. And it only made $86 million. So it made back its budget, but with marketing and all this kind of stuff. And by the time you get all done with it probably broke even, is my imagination. So, David, I want you to tell us, what is War Dogs about? Can you give me a quick synopsis of the film?
So yeah, War Dogs is about a... young, down on his luck, Jewish massage therapist living. Now that's actually where I'm like,
yeah.
Where do they live?
Miami.
Miami.
Yeah,
there we
Miami.
go. That's right. Yeah. That's right. So living in Miami, making his money massaging rich dudes. He's got a young. Girlfriend who doesn't speak much English, and well, he's not happy with his life.
No,
he tries to come up with a new angle, selling sheets to old folks' homes, and well, turns out that nobody gives a shit about old people.
So yeah, that's the opening of the movie. Let me read you the opening quote. It's the quote kind of the movie starts out with, first off, of him, this main character, David Packouz, I think his name, or Packouz or something like that. Packouz, whatever, how you ever pronounce it. But anyway, based on a true story, on a novel. And basically it tells about this guy who's down on his luck, and he meets a childhood friend of his that he hasn't seen in years. And it turns out his childhood friend is now a military arms dealer. And so he starts working for him, and they figure out the world of arms dealing during the Afghan and Iraq conflicts in the mid-2000s. And let me tell you, this is a very interesting story as we get through it. But let me read you the opening quote that they have in the movie here. So it's read by the character David, played by Miles Teller. What do you know about war? They'll tell you it's about patriotism, democracy, or some crap about the other guy hating our freedom. But you want to know what it's really about? What do you see? A kid from Arkansas doing his patriotic duty to defend his country? I see a helmet, fire retardant gloves, body armor, and an M16. I see $17,500. That's what it costs to outfit one American soldier. Over 2 million soldiers fought in Iraq and Afghanistan. It cost the American taxpayer $4.5 billion each year just to pay for the air conditioning bills for those wars. And that's what war is really about. War is an economy. Anybody who tells you otherwise is either in on it or stupid. So that kind of tells you what we're getting into. This is kind of like, I was listening actually to an interview from the guy this is based off, and it's pretty fascinating. And I think it's interesting to see this side of war and conflict from the side of basically the people who are making the money and taking advantage of an unfortunate scenario. So, but when we were going through this, David, what's your overall thoughts on the film? And what's some things you liked about it, didn't like about it, and what are I know one of the complaints you have, but we'll get to that later when we talk about Ana de Armas. But,
Oh my God.
but go ahead and tell me what you thought.
Less of a complaint, but anyway.
Wait, what was it then?
It was. We'll get to it later.
We'll get to it.
Yeah, so I thought this movie was the story. I think is the most interesting part about it, because from what I understand, is based on a true story, and although there might have been some embellishing involved in the so-called Hollywoodization of the story, it's interesting because despite the fact that that's happening, that they've embellishing, making certain parts more exciting than they actually were, you can tell that this is the kind of thing that more or less would have gone on during that time period. And that's what I think makes it so compelling, is that this is essentially what our government was up to back in those days, and probably still is if we're being honest.
Oh yeah, I mean absolutely. I mean, you see some of the bills being passed today, and some who we're sending money to. You can absolutely find out what the current state of that is. I'll let you, the audience, imagine that for you. But instead of doing that for you, so anyway. Anything else? Like what? I think something that this film does really well is really give us. It's weird because these guys are kind of like a bunch of douchebags, but they're kind of endearing. Like they're very human. I think that's something the film is really successful at, is bringing those characters into focus and really making you. I think it does a successful job at making you care about them, even like Ephraim, who's his friend, and is just a total a-hole.
Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say
maybe not
it makes you care about Ephraim.
But maybe
at the
not.
Very least,
yeah.
At the very least, you're sympathetic to the plight of the main character,
of David, yeah,
and his girl.
Yeah. Maybe not care is the word I would say, but making them. I mean, they're very endearing, but also making like. I think the Hollywoodization of this character Ephraim, played by Jonah Hill, is very much very entertaining to watch. And Jonah Hill's extremely. I don't know if excellent's the word I would use, but he's very entertaining.
He's very engaging, and despite the fact that his total character is an utter piece of trash from a moral perspective, you can at least see why the main character sort of gets taken in by his rhetoric, you know? Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like it's the connection you have as friends and that whatnot that he has for him. But then you have Ephraim taking advantage of him and all this stuff. And it's just, it's like he's an ultimate manipulator is what I would say.
Yeah, and it kind of sort of, their relationship, you find, as the viewer, you find out more and more about their relationship as the film goes on. And I don't think this is much of a spoiler. You know, at first you're like, okay, this Ephraim character is a total dirtbag.
Yeah.
But, you know, he's best friends with our main guy, so we kind of have a little bit of sympathy for him. And then you, as the movie goes on, you start to see that friendship was not really a friendship.
No, in fact, I think we get Ephraim's character established at the very beginning. I mean, he's at the funeral. He's wearing the not yarmulke. God, that's not the right term. It's what's the thing that you put on your head?
The yarmulke?
The yarmulke. Thank you. Okay, I was for a second. I kept thinking dreidel when I said yarmulke, and I'm like, I know that's wrong. I know it's Jewish, but it's wrong. Okay, so anyway,
a small hat.
A small hat he wears, but then he takes it off. He's a drug dealer. He's also an arms dealer. He's all these bad, moralistically.
Drug dealer.
Oh no, he's all these moralistically gray and dark things, and also an ultimate douchebag. But one thing, the scene I love in this film so much is the scene with him and the gangsters when Ephraim goes to buy weed. It's at the very beginning, right after you get to this funeral scene we just described, and Ephraim goes up to this apartment complex. He's looking for his dealer that he knows. He's trying to buy an ounce of weed or something, and the guy's not home. There's some gangsters in the parking lot. He walks down the stairs, and he's like, hey, you know where so-and-so's at? And they're like, oh, hey, I'm his dealer. What do you want, dude? And he's like, just an ounce of weed. And they're like, $300. And I'm like, dang, that's a little expensive. But this was 2005, so I understand. And Miami. So he gives him $300 just cash out front. And then like the guy's like, thanks. And he puts it in his pocket, continues talking to his buddy. And Ephraim's just standing there like, what the heck, man? Like, what's going on? Where's my product? He's like, well, who are you? What are you talking about? And he's like, I just gave you $300. And he's like, get out of here, white boy. And then like Ephraim walks over to his car and then opens the back of the trunk and just pulls out a Uzi or something and starts firing into the air. And all the gangsters are spread out and everybody in the neighborhood's like running around and getting out of there. And it's like, and then the music in the film, it's like, what up, gangsta? Starts playing. And it's like this little, like, it's slow motion. Jonah Hill's walking on the side of the car. And it's like 3 different, like, fade transitions of him looking at Dave. And he's like, yeah. But it, like, establishes his character. Like, you're like, okay, this guy's likable, but he's, like, super evil, I guess, as well. And I don't know. I love that scene so much. I don't know why. It's just very appealing, I guess. So not because of the weed, but
it's deep down. Do you wish you could have gone to the hood to buy some weed in Miami?
No, but it's kind of a badass scene, and I kind of like it. So.
No, it's a very entertaining scene for sure. And it kind of gives us a glimpse into Ephraim's character. How he's able to function the way he does is just by basically consistently putting himself in finding ways of giving himself the upper hand in a situation.
Yeah, and something that if you guys ever want to watch War Dogs, I highly recommend it to you. We're going to go through a little bit of the plot here and explain our thoughts as we are doing right now, but I want to say that there's an interview with the guy who is based off the character Miles Teller's playing, and David Pacos. There's an interview on YouTube called Arms Dealer Interview David Pacos, and it's by Soft White Underbelly on YouTube. And it's like an hour long or so, and it's just him sitting down, really well lit room, and it's just an interview, and the guy is like, he kind of just confirms everything that the movie is saying, but also, saying what Hollywood made, Hollywoodized and all that kind of stuff. Like, for example, like the girlfriend, which we're going to get into next, always knew about like the dealings and the weapons and all this kind of stuff. She's kind of in on it. Imagine like in Goodfellas, like where Ray Liotta's wife is in on it the whole time. That's kind of like how she was, except she's like just glad he's making money and not like down on his luck and poor. So that's kind of like how that was, instead of in the movie it's portrayed she didn't know about anything. He was lying the whole time. It's contention, it's drama. So that was one big change. But I highly recommend just go on YouTube and type in interviews with this guy. Really fascinating stuff. So let's jump to the scene after this. You have Ana de Armas playing his girlfriend, David's girlfriend, and you have all of the Egyptian bed sheets boxes on the wall. And this is where I told you, David, the fact that Ana de Armas didn't even know how to speak English when she got this role. And that led you down the path of being like, what? Well, I know exactly why she got hired. And we kind of both looked at the screen as she's acting, and we're like, yeah, we know why. Yeah. But what do you think of Ana de Armas in this movie, and what was your contention with this movie? That's your concern, I guess.
She was
strikingly beautiful.
Yes.
Almost too beautiful.
Yeah, basically what I said was, after seeing a little bit of her acting in the movie and learning this interesting factoid about how she didn't speak any English when initially auditioning for the part, I was like, yeah, that's the casting couch at work. And this was the era before.
This was before Weinstein stuff happened. This was 2016.
This was before the
15,
Me
16,
Too kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So the casting couch
and
was
it still
alive
happens today.
and well.
That didn't make it go away.
Yeah, but it was in its prime.
Harvey was still kicking,
Yeah. But anyway. All that casting couch and all that aside, she does a perfectly serviceable role.
Job, yeah.
I'm not gonna say she's like a standout character, but she definitely pulls her weight as far as acting chops go. She doesn't like drag the movie down or anything like that. So,
and speaking of acting, I want to say that Miles Teller as David is a perfect, how you would describe David, a perfect foil for Jonah Hill's character. It's this like, oh, hey, I'm down on my luck. I need help. Hey, I can help you out. My name is Ephraim. That's a real person's name, because nobody would write a character named Ephraim. Nobody. That's how you can tell it's a real story.
No. Ephraim's a Jewish name.
Nah, but I never see it in movies, David. Come on. I don't see Ephraim in movies. Well, maybe I just haven't seen a lot of movies.
Well, they're really, really. That's part of the what goes on in this movie is they're really, really, really doubling down on the fact that our two main characters are extremely Jewish. Even though Jonah Hill's character is not a practicing Orthodox Jew, he's very much involved. He's very much immersed in the world of Judaism, not because he's practicing the faith, but because of family connections, and he's making use of that for his own personal gain.
Yeah. And that's something that's really very accurate to the real life scenario, where David and him met at synagogue, and David was still he was still a practicing Jew, I believe, when he met him. And then, he was older, he did his own thing afterward, but very Jewish, it's traditionally Jewish and all that his entire life. And it just, it's interesting how that movie keeps that accuracy very apparent and uses it to tell the story of Jonah Hill and using it and all that, taking advantage of people. So it just shows what such a douchebag he is. So, but that's something that was accurate. I wouldn't describe it as this movie doubles down on it. I would just call it an element.
Well, it's a very pervasive element. Because it starts off with you have the two main characters attending a Jewish funeral with Jonah Hill's character coming in and specifically putting on a yarmulke to be part of the funeral. and you get a glimpse of the guy officiating. He's clearly a rabbi. So right off the bat, you've got in-your-face Jewishness, and then they meet and they talk about old times, and they're clearly referencing they're clearly referencing their time together growing up as Jewish boys, and then it doesn't stop there.
The Jewish gets even more pervasive.
You get into this whole like angle with the dry cleaner guy.
Yeah, his investor.
Yeah, who is basically okay with what Ephraim is doing because he's under the impression that Ephraim is a practicing Orthodox Jew and is selling weapons to people for the express purpose of helping Israel defend itself.
Yeah. He uses that as the angle. That's right. I forgot about that. That was hilarious because we're watching this and he's like, yes, he's using this dry cleaner friend of his who's very Jewish as an investor for his business, AEY, who's the arms dealer company that Ephraim runs by himself and brings on David later on. And this investor is like the angle that Ephraim gives him is like, we got to protect Israel. We got to fight off Israel's enemies. So please invest money into my place. So it's like, oh my gosh, this guy is so ridiculous. But I think that's one thing that's so appealing about, especially Jonah Hill's portrayal, is it's totally out of this world. And it's totally like, it's so attractive to me because in terms of just the acting in general and the way how entertaining the character is, because it's in the frame of this was a real person, and sometimes fact is very much stranger than fiction. So you kind of just go along and you just believe it. In real life, I was listening to an interview clip of David's character, David, the actual guy, and he said that Ephraim in real life was extremely unlikable. Like, you could probably hang out with this Ephraim and have an okay time. Yeah, he's a manipulator, but you could hang out and just enjoy yourself. But no, in real life, this guy was like business, money, working constantly, nonstop, always thinking about money. And he burned every bridge. At every bridge he came across, he burned every single thing. And he was totally just an a-hole and mean. And he said in the movie, Jonah Hill makes him seem more cuddly and more likable, and that's one of the Hollywoodizations of it. So I just find it really interesting about the acting, and I see why Jonah Hill got, I don't know if this was before or after Moneyball. I want to say it's around the same time. Have you seen Moneyball?
I have not actually.
That's the Brad Pitt baseball movie.
Yeah, I've heard of the movie,
but
it's
really good.
Never watched it.
It's really good. And Jonah Hill's great in it because he was doing comedy up until that point, and he just, all pun intended, knocks it out of the park. Kind of how he does it in this movie. So moving on, we're introduced to the girlfriend. Ephraim then introduces David to how his business works. So this is 05. You're using Windows XP. You're going on government websites, and you're accessing all these different government contract bids. And for him, he goes after the smaller ones to make more money and to avoid the bigger stuff that he can't fulfill, and he doesn't have to compete with the big guys. So he goes after, in quotes, the crumbs. So he goes after the crumbs of the United States government contracts and tries to fulfill those orders if he wins the contracts, and makes connections, business deals, fulfills orders such as ammunition, weapons, even fuel. The real life story, David said one of the biggest deals he conjured up was about, I want to say 40,000 gallons of propane. And that was like, or something like that, some crazy number like that. And he was able to fulfill it and get it done. And he made like $8,000 off of it over like a month of work, which is pretty dang good. So that was his words. He's like, yeah, I made $8,000 in like a month doing that. And I was like, whoa. But in the real life, they would like constantly go after tons of contracts, and you may get approved for it. They might go with you, but they most likely won't. So it was very cutthroat, especially during this time with the wars going on in Afghanistan, Iraq, all this kind of stuff. And it's just fascinating to me, David, like the whole war angle and making profit off the war. Like, that's something it's unconventional. It's something we don't see portrayed by Hollywood very much, from what I've seen personally.
There's a few movies about it. Maybe not as many as there could be.
No.
But there are a few movies about it. The one that I've never seen, but I remember came out, I think, closer to the time period in which the story of this movie takes place. But I can't remember because I've never seen it. Was Lords of War. You ever heard of that one?
No.
Yeah. So there's a few.
What's it called? The
Lords of War.
Lords? I think I've heard of the name, the Lords of War.
I don't think there's a "the" in it.
Oh, Lord of War?
I think it's Lord.
Nick Cage?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. There's also a board game called Lord of War, so it's very, very common. But, yeah, I'm going to have to check this movie out. I'm looking at it right now. Two brothers. Jared Leto. What?
What year did that movie come out?
It was, I'm just looking at Wikipedia, so take it with a grain of salt. 2005.
2005. So I'm correct. It did come out.
That came out right as this real life story is happening.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's yeah.
So anyway, I just think you take the relationships with these characters, and then you take the whole arms dealing thing in general, and it just wraps it in this really neat bow that I think kind of, and you take also the talent of Todd Phillips as a director, and I also love the cinematography. The cinematographer on this did a just fantastic job. I don't remember his name, but he knocked it out of the park, and you can tell this very much looks like one of the Hangover movies, or even Joker. I think Joker has a different cinematographer, but you can tell that this is the same director and stuff. And it's just, I find it cool. I just find that stuff cool. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. What was interesting to me about the cinematography is a lot of the long sweeping shots that gave you a sense of where the characters were in the world. Like you had like the one in particular that comes to mind right now is you had the long shot of them driving through the streets of some town in Albania, and you just really get a sense of, wow, this place is a dump. Like right after the what's his face, Henry is like, oh, Albania, it's a beautiful country. Yeah.
And when in reality it's like the poorest country in the world, one of the poorest countries in the world at that moment. So we have some more juicy tidbits about Albania, but we'll save that for a little bit. But anyway, so let's see what happens after this. You have them trying to find deals together. They're reconnecting. They're having fun, throwing phones in the oceans, being a bunch of rich Miami bros, smoking a bunch of dope, snorting a lot of lines. Oh yes, David's girlfriend is pregnant, so he's going to be a dad. So now he's got all this pressure, and he's like, now I have to stay with Ephraim because I got to provide for my fam. So here we go. And then like they get this deal in the movie involving Berettas for I think it was like, in the movie they say it was first centuries police in Afghanistan, I think, or something like that. I don't know. But it was for the police force that the U.S. Army is arming or something like that. And they want actual Italian Berettas.
Are you, well, the second big deal.
This is the gun run.
The second big deal.
That's the second big deal.
Was for arming the local populace.
You're talking about the final deal, or are you talking about the one with the Berettas?
I'm talking about the Afghan deal.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the Berettas.
No, I know. I'm saying that one was for...
that one was for arming.
Was for arming the locals.
Oh, okay.
They were basically building up the Afghani army, and they needed a crap ton of bullets to, basically arm them. I think the Berettas were actually just for a local...
it was for local
military commander in who was currently deployed. But yeah, they needed a shipment. They wanted a shipment of Berettas. Berettas are an Italian-made handgun, And lo and behold, the Italian government recently passed a law banning the sale of weapons to the Middle East.
Yeah. So they come into...
to Iraq specifically.
To Iraq specifically, yeah. So they're like, crap, how do we get these guns into Iraq? And so they're like, I got an idea. Because, and then, like you said, the law changed. And David finds out about this because he calls the army sergeant or the head of the military operation that he's selling them to. And he's like, hey, yeah, we got them on the way. You know, we got them all together. We just got to get them to you. And he's like, you do know that the Italians passed a law last week. And he's like, yeah, we understand. We're working on it. It's a little hiccup on the road, but we're figuring it out, total salesman kind of thing. And then he's like, David's like, oh man, what are we going to do? And like, he's on the phone. And then Ephraim's like, oh my God. He's like, here, I'll pick it up. And so he totally plays like, is one Christian man to another, Sergeant. I'm just trying to provide for my family. And he's like, just BS and his whole way through it. It's so disgusting. So the guy hangs up on him. They're like, crap, what are we going to do? He's like, well, let's go get our guns. They're stuck in, was it Jordan? Yeah, they're stuck in Jordan.
They were stuck in the
bay on Jordan.
They weren't. No. So basically, what happened is they were going to be shipped direct from Italy to Iraq.
But
what ended up happening is they're like, "Hey, Jordan is on it borders Iraq, and there's no law against shipping weapons from Italy to Jordan. So they're like, we'll just have the Italians ship the weapons to Jordan, and then we'll get them across the border ourselves. And this is kind of where the story kind of kicks things up a notch, because at this point the girlfriend is kind of sort of in on it. Mm-hmm. She knows that they're working on some things. She doesn't know the full details.
Yeah, she knows it involves weapons though.
But she's also but she's kind of okay with it because from her perspective, it's more or less an office job, even though it's, a lot of shady work. At least it's more or less an office job. So she's kind of,
she's cool with it because he's safe.
Yeah, she can rationalize it that way.
Yeah.
And then so this is where it kind of oh, well, that's out the window because they have to literally fly to the Middle East in order to make sure that these weapons cross the border.
Yeah, so they get there. They figure out a way to get the access to them from a smuggler dude. So they're able to get them. They put it on a truck, and this little kid who's been translating over from English to... I don't know what language they're speaking. But anyway, the kid's translating for him, and then they finally were able to get the truck, and the kid's like, this is the best smuggler in Jordan. He's the best one around. He's like, oh, really? And they're like, yeah. And he's like, we need to fly those things away. And he's like, there's no fly zone in Iraq. You can't fly them into Iraq. That's ridiculous. And so he's like, no, I need them to fly. So he has them in this truck, and the smuggler has them in the truck. And so they're like, crap, I guess we're going to have to drive these through Jordan into Iraq, through Iraq, and get them to where they need to go. And that's exactly what they do. They get in, hop in this car with a guy named Marlboro, and who's a smuggler dude, and they need to drive 500 miles or 800 kilometers to where they need to go to deliver these Berettas. And it's like, geez, man, this is crazy. And I haven't heard all the interviews yet, but I'm pretty sure this was something that actually happened because he never refuted any of it as far as from what I've heard. So I'm just going to go ahead and believe this really happened. I'm sure it's less colorful. Maybe they weren't running away from Iraqis, but you know what? I'd like to imagine maybe they did. I don't know. So anyway, they hop in the car, and the guy's like, no, 50-50. They're like, what chance are we going to survive? 50-50 is good. A good chance. And they're like, 50-50? He doesn't even know what that freaking means. And it's so funny, David, because I actually met somebody today at work that I was helping out with who used that exact phrase. No, 50-50 is good. And I was in my mind, I'm like, I don't know if he knows what 50-50 means. I was like, but no judgment. I'm just going to keep working with you and keep going along. So So anyway, we have them driving across the desert. The guy says there's free petrol in Iraq. And so, like, Jonah Hill's character is like, dude, Iraq is dope. We got free gas, man. There's free gas. Iraq is dope. And so it's like David is just going along with this and is like, all right, I guess I'm sucked into this. They get to a border crossing. A bunch of Iraqis are there. The guy reaches down. They pull the guns on him, and he hands them 2 packs of, like, I think they're long Marlboros, but they're like 2 big packs.
Yeah,
of
they're
cigarettes.
2 cartons of cigarettes.
2 cartons of cigarettes. And that's how he uses to smuggle stuff back and forth. So that's cool. So that happens. And then they wake up. I mean, I'm sure some time has passed, but they wake up next to a petrol station in the morning. And Marlboro is getting some gas, but they don't know about it. They find a dead body in the gas station. Ephraim gets out and takes a leak. And that's one thing I want to talk about. Like you say, the tracking shot where they're driving to Albania, the tracking shot, the long shot with Jonah Hill walking through the desert or by the gas station, getting ready to go, like trying to find a place to take a leak. That's a long shot. And that kind of shows me that Ephraim's not willing to adapt or change in any scenario. He's always, as a character, he's always just himself. And he's always like unbothered by pretty much any like environment he's in, because he's not willing to make that sacrifice or adapt to other people. They have to adapt to him. That's something that I just, from that one shot, that's what that shows to me, is like he is like unbothered by the hot sun, that they're in the middle of nowhere, that their lives at risk. He's like, I just want my money. So it's like, I don't know, just find an interesting character study about that guy. So anyway, oh no, there's a bunch of Iraqis coming down the road in a bunch of pickup trucks with some guns, 50 cals, a whole bunch of AKs or whatever. And they're coming after him. They freak out. They start driving away. Oh no, the car's empty on gas. They book it. The guy, Marlboro, is like, no, wait. He has 1 gas can with him, hops in the back of the truck. The Iraqis are still chasing him. He then undoes the cap of the gas and starts filling up the gas in the back. And it's this tense scene. They're running away from the Iraqis. They're going slow. They can't go very fast because they got no petrol in there. And then what happens, David? What happens? What happens that changes the whole scenario?
Well, they see the good old U.S. military coming straight at them, go around them, and straight towards their pursuers. Yeah, the big old Black Hawk helicopter, and then some armored Humvees pass them by moments later.
And as they're passing by, they're like, yeah, we're saved. And the guy, the U.S. Army guy driving the truck by him is flipping them off.
Yeah.
Oh, and then like Jonah Hill's character, Ephraim's yells out, God bless Dick Cheney's America. And it's great. So full spoilers, guys, by the way, as we continue on. So anyway, they get the Berettas to the guy. The guy can't believe he gets the Berettas. And then that shows the U.S. military that, oh, AEY or whatever is legit and they're kind of cool. And they go to get paid, David. Let me tell you. They go get paid, and it's like bricks of money. What's it called? Pallets full of giant cubes of U.S. cash just sitting there. And it's like some crazy, like $40 billion just sitting there. It's like, good Lord almighty. Like, I know we're fighting a war. I know this is how the U.S. fights wars. But, man, it's kind of crazy to imagine that kind of stuff. So imagine what's going on today. Whoa. War makes money. Money makes war. And it's sad, but it's true. I don't know. What do you think about all this aspect of, I don't know, making money off of a bad scenario, you know?
I mean, that's what people are going to do in any situation, right? They're going to, like, still got to put food on the table, still got to pay the bills, right? So.
And what's that quote from, I don't remember what politician. You'll probably know when I say it, but it's never let a good disaster or conflict go to waste or something. What was that? What politician? Was it Nancy Pelosi that said that?
No.
It was never let a good disaster go to waste or something.
No.
What was it?
I
can't remember.
That's not quite the quote either.
No, it's not. No, I'm paraphrasing for sure.
I can't remember.
While you look that up, I remember it was a politician that said that, and it's like, oh, never let a disaster go to waste. I don't want to say it was Mitch. It was somebody else. It was somebody else. But anyway, I find it just interesting because the kind of like, because over the summer, I did the fire stuff, and we're not taking advantage of a bad situation. We're just doing our job. But knowing that context of being a contractor and working for the government to take care of a bad scenario, like a fire, kind of gives you a tiny glimpse into what like the crazy stuff that kind of this movie portrays. I'm not comparing that arms dealing is the same as fighting fires. Far from that. What I am bringing up is the concept of working for the government to help in a disaster scenario, whether it be a fire, a hurricane, etc., and getting paid by the government to do that kind of thing. And it's just all connecting in my brain for me is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So I looked up the quote. It's never let a good crisis go to waste. And it is attributed to Winston Churchill.
Winston Churchill?
Yes.
Fake news. No. I'm joking.
It's believed that he said that after World War II, during the formation of the United Nations.
Interesting. I wonder what context that was in. Like, you said it was the forming of the United Nations when he said that?
As during that time, yes.
That time. Dang. So he was working with, what was the guy after FDR? Was it Calvin Coolidge? It was, it's going to bug me now. But anyway, he was working with him and all that kind of stuff, and the guy after FDR and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so the Beretta deal goes great. They sell the Berettas. They're very good, very high quality Berettas. Really great. Some of the best Berettas around. And it gets them more attention. They get more money. They get a good paycheck out of it. In the movies portrayed that they purchase apartments, which is the dumbest thing I've ever seen anybody do. Why would you purchase an apartment? God, it's just, it makes me mad because it's such a waste of money in my mind. But anyway.
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of the
I get it.
The
yeah,
theme
the
of
point.
this
yeah.
is they're living large and they're doing things specifically to waste money.
Yeah. So anyway, so they go to this, like, what's his name? David sees this bid online that is like a crazy, crazy contract to supply the U.S. government with over many different things, but one of those is 100 million rounds of ammunition for AK-47 specifically, 7.62 millimeters, I believe. So anyway, he sees this and he calls Ephraim in the middle of the night and he's like, "Yo, bro, you gotta come check this out." And he goes and he checks this out on the lap. He's like, "Yo, this is legit. I can't believe this." So like, how the heck are we gonna get this done? So they go to this like conference in Vegas as portrayed in the movie, and they find an arms dealer by chance. Not really, but they find an arms dealer at a poker table that David meets.
Before they find this guy, they basically try to do it. They basically try to get the deal done piecemeal. They talk to all these different suppliers, all these different people, and to try and piece together enough ammunition from all these different sources. And it's just kind of you see a bunch of shots of them talking to people, and David is narrating that that's what they did, but unfortunately they find out it's going to be a logistical nightmare to do it that way, and that it's just not feasible for a small operation like them to do it. And so at that point, they're just like, they don't know what to do, so they're just kind of like resorted to enjoying their time in Vegas. And then you see David at a blackjack table, chance meeting with... the
guy's name is... Oh, no, I don't remember. But
his first name was Henry.
Henry Garrigo, I think. Something like that. Portrayed by Bradley Cooper. Another Todd Phillips connection. Or connection to The Hangover, you should say. So anyway, that happens. They meet with this guy. he says, no, I got your ammunition. They're like, what? How? He's like, it's in Albania. And they're like, what do you mean it's in Albania? And what is Albania? And he's like, look, Albania was basically preparing for a war that never came. In real life, David actually goes into this in one of the interviews I watched. He said that Albania was ruled by this guy that was taken over by ex-Soviet Union guys who didn't consider the Soviet Union true communist. So they detracted from the Soviet Union, invaded Albania, took over the government, and basically the guy who ran Albania during the Soviet Union era, the Cold War, during the Cold War, he basically kept stockpiling ammo and weapons and tanks and all this kind of military stuff because he believed that Russia would invade him and the Soviet Union in general. Because detractors, he's like, no, they're going to come after me. There's no way they're not. And it was kind of like in the Bible where Cain, who kills Abel, like builds this giant city with giant walls, and he just stays there because he thinks God's going to get like back at him somehow because he's scared. It's kind of like a scenario here where like, this guy takes over Albania and just sucks it dry of all resources and then builds up this giant military and stockpiles all this stuff throughout the years. And then basically by the time he's done, the Soviet Union is over and peace is already done and he has nothing. Then he kind of falls off of power after that.
Was this...
This was a real life
yeah, I know, but I'm going to ask you a question. This guy, by any chance, was his name Hoxha?
I actually have no idea. He just said it was, he might have said the name. Hoxha. How do you spell that?
Hoxha.
H-A. Hoxha. Enver Hoxha?
Enver Hoxha. Was an Albanian communist politician who was the ruler of Albania from 1944 until his death in 1985. Sounds like the guy to me.
Sounds like the guy. So
the reason why I bring that up is because I thought it was really funny. Is I didn't know you were going to mention that little bit of history in connection with the whole preparing for the war that never came. Because while we were watching the movie, I ended up Googling that guy.
Oh yeah,
because of an unrelated Facebook post.
Really?
Like a Facebook post that had nothing to do with the movie at all. And I was just like, Hoxha? What's
Hoxha?
And so I ended up Googling Hoxha just because of that. And yeah, basically, Hoxha had a falling out with the Maoists, I believe.
Ooh.
And over their views on post-Stalin communism. And so Hoxha took the position that post-Stalin communism was not real communism.
Yeah, I did not know you looked that up. That's really interesting.
And what's interesting too is a little bit after I looked up that guy, there was a character in the movie with the same first name.
Really?
There was a character named Enver in the movie, like a few minutes after I looked up this guy, all because of an unrelated Facebook post I saw.
Yeah. So, just a little bit of history there as a context. So, the guy, Bradley Cooper's character, I just forgot his name. But anyway, Bradley Cooper's character then makes a deal with Jonah Hill and Miles Teller, and he's like, hey, I got all your stuff. I know the son of the prince or prime minister of the current Albanian government, and he's friends with me. I have connections there. Basically, I can get you your ammo because it's all stockpiled in warehouses. So he's able to give him the ammo. Well, pay. He's able to pay for it, and then they go to Albania. And just really interesting how this all starts forming, because this is the biggest deal of AEY's company history, which is been around for probably a year at this point or something. I don't know.
And also too, it's one of the biggest deals, period.
Yeah.
It's even bigger than a lot of deals that these larger companies were grabbing up. AEY was formed to go after the crumbs, and now all of a sudden they're going after a
stuff.
deal that's big even by like a large company
like
standards.
a big billion-dollar corporation. Yeah, it's the kind of deal billions of companies that are billions of dollars in size would go after, and it's kind of crazy. So they go after this deal. They do it. Or they get ready. They go to the warehouse in Albania. They like fly 22 hours or something like that, and Jonah, Ephraim, and David go there, and they're like, "What do you mean all the bullets are here?" And they're like, "All these shipping containers, they are the bullets." And it's just like I think they said 62,000 boxes of ammunition, equaling to over 126 million rounds of ammunition, I think.
Yeah, it was
Something
over.
like that.
It was over 62,000 boxes. I remember that.
Yeah, and it's like, oh my God, that's crazy. And all this stuff was, it's so funny because we end up finding out later that all the ammunition was made in China because the Mr. Enver had connections and bought it from China. That's how he made an alliance with China actually during the time he was really in Albania, which I found kind of interesting. So the Maoist fallout that you're talking about, that's probably what happened. So anyway, so I was reading the Britannica article about it, so it's kind of interesting. While we're here, we have a really funny shot of Jonah Hill holding the AK-47, testing out the ammo, and he's like, yeah, and he's just shooting a bunch. He's like totally like in his Scarface element.
Yeah, and what's the song? "Wish You Were Here" by Pink Floyd is playing.
It's so weird.
Yeah,
that's something we haven't touched on. The music is so weird in this movie. It's just weird choices, I think.
It's kind of like a weird like just combination of like popular like rock and pop songs that somebody of this like somebody of like these characters' age and background and stuff would probably have been into listening to. Like one of the early shots in the movie is you hear the camera is closing in on David's car, and you hear the muffled sounds of Funk 49 by the James Gang playing, and then it cuts to inside his car, and it's playing at full volume, so as if to signal that he's like, this is while he's smoking his doobie that we talked about earlier, to signal that this is what he's listening to in the car. So I think that kind of establishes that this is just music that the characters would have probably liked listened to, and because it doesn't really have any other connection other than that, I think. Well,
you know what connection they do have? They have the Jewish connection. So you have to throw Beastie Boys in there.
Oh yeah, that was really funny. They're like Ephraim and David are rolling down the highway, and "So What You Want" by the Beastie Boys is playing. And for those who are not in the know, the Beastie Boys were formed by a group of Jewish boys from New York. They started as a hardcore band and transitioned into gangsta rap.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you got "So What You Want" playing as they're driving down the freeway, and then when they get to the neighborhood where they're gonna buy
the weed,
all of a sudden
it goes into urban.
It's a more urban type of gangster rap.
Gangster rap, yeah. Oh, just to let the audience know that we're in a different place, just so you know. What up, gangsta? It's like you couldn't be more on the nose there. So anyway, they go test out this ammo. They purchase the ammo. They buy it all because one thing the guy said in one of the interviews was that you would go out and when you're getting the contracts, yes, you would source your stuff, but sometimes you would even purchase it beforehand just so to know that you have it before other people. That's something he clarified in that interview, and I thought that was really interesting. So they go test out the ammo. 3 months later, they're put on. The government never gets back to them, and then they finally do. And it's a scene where they're on David and his family's on the beach, and then Ephraim's running after him, and his wife's like, "Is that Ephraim?" And he's like, David, we got the deal. We got the Afghan deal." And he's like, "Yeah, we're gonna be rich." It's a deal worth $300 million, which is insane. So anyway, they get the deal. And because they get the deal, the government's like, okay, you get the deal, but here's the thing. We need to do 5 separate audits on you. And that's what's going to happen before we go through with this. So like, just so the audience is aware, when you're dealing with like, when the arms dealers have to deal with all this stuff from the federal government, and it's just like filling out paperwork, going to this form, doing all this crap. But in this case, the company that Ephraim's running, because Ephraim is so shady, has no history of any finances or any like bank statements or anything or any accounting whatsoever. So they go ahead and they forge. In real life, they've spent like a week and a half doing this with an accountant they hired, and they forged literally like years of statements and finance history for the company all in a week and a half. They spent like countless nights doing it. It's like, what the heck? This is so crazy. And the guy David is still going with him because, you know, this is his job now. You know, he knows how to do everything here. So they do all the audits. Funny enough, in the real life story, they sent like an actual inspection team to go inspect and evaluate the company. And at that point, they didn't even have an office space. It was just Ephraim and David in Ephraim's like living room doing all this at this time. While they get a $300 million deal, it's like, holy crap, what the heck? And so they rent out an office. They go to Craigslist, hire some people to pretend be employees. And then for some reason, the entire evaluation team that shows up from the Department of Defense is all women, like mid-40s. And so Ephraim in real life's like, hey, ladies, how you doing? And he's like all talking them up and, you know, being suave and slick. He's like, you know what? You guys are way more beautiful than I thought you were. And you know what? If it wasn't illegal, I'd be buying everybody diamonds here. It's like, and so they got a glowing review in real life and all this stuff. In the movie, they get audited. They go to the Pentagon. And they get approved for the deal, and they find out that the deal that they got greenlit for, they actually came in way lower than everybody else bidding on it, and that's the main reason they got it. And they came in $53 million lower than the lowest bidder. So it's like, oh my gosh. And so Ephraim's freaking out because he loves money and he can't stand losing any money. So he's acting like a little child in the hallway, screaming and ranting, finding out about this. Also, before this, they were in the parking lot getting high as a kite, and you have this shot with them both in the car smoking doobies with the American flag reflecting on the hood of the car. And it's like, oh man, this is a fun movie. So anyway, after this, David has some issues with his girlfriend and his little kid. She's going to go live with the mom or something, and then stuff starts going down. We get David writing up a contract that he makes Ephraim sign for his agreed upon deal of the company, 30% cut, and he leaves it in a drawer in his office, which is never a good idea. Never leave it next to your business partner. And Ephraim signs it, walks away, gives him a fancy gold grenade, walks away, and then David's in Albania for like 8 weeks straight, just managing all the bullets and all this stuff. And then we find out, David, that the bullets were manufactured in China. And turns out there's a trade, what's it called?
There's an embargo.
On China.
Yeah, the U.S. has an embargo on China.
From like 1986 or 89 at this point or something like that, during this time. And so they're freaking out. This is like, they call up Bradley Cooper's character, like, you sold us all this stuff and you didn't know what was going on. He's like, hey, this isn't my problem anymore. Shut up and just do your job, or get my cut. So they're mad at him. They're like, what are we going to do? Ephraim flies to Albania. And then he's like, I got an idea. We'll just repackage all the ammo. The Chinese lettering's only on the crates, right? Yeah. In real life, they're actually on the bullets too, but we're not going to. The movie doesn't explain that. So they go and meet with a guy who's actually has connections to the gangsters in Albania, but who also owns a packaging and boxing company. And they hire him to package it all. And there's a funny scene where they're like testing how long it's going to take to package one of these and box it up. It takes like 45 seconds for his guys to do it. And then he times it. He writes it down. He's like, it will take my men $100,000 for 6 weeks to get it all done. And so Ephraim leans over to David and he's like, hey, come here. We're going to talk about it first. So they lean in and they're starting to talk. And he's like, yeah, pretend you're talking serious, you know. It's a really good deal, you know. He's like, this is a really good deal, you know. So pretend you're talking serious. You want to get to dinner after this? Yeah. Where's the dinner? It's a good place down the hotel, just down the road, you know. And so, because like $100,000, they're gonna make $300 million. Like it's nothing to them. So they go ahead and they go through with this. And so Ephraim's still in Albania. They get their first shipment out there. They're able to save so much money doing it this way. At this point, it's Christmas. David's missing his family. He calls Ephraim saying, why the heck aren't you here? You should be doing this. And Ephraim calls him up saying that, hey, the reason why I'm calling you is because so-and-so, Bradley Cooper's character, is making like, I want to say like 4 cents, or let's see. They're selling the bullets 10 cents a bullet. But Bradley Cooper sold it to him for like...
No.
What?
So
I can't remember.
Bradley Cooper, Henry is the character.
Yeah, Henry. Sorry, Henry.
Henry sells them the bullets for 10 cents a bullet.
10 cents a bullet, yeah.
But then Ephraim finds out that Henry bought the bullets for 2 cents a bullet.
2 cents a bullet, yeah. But Ephraim and the whole company and David are making plenty of money off of this deal that it doesn't really matter. Like they're gonna make bank. Like, but Ephraim is like so mad that he got screwed over that he wants to cut Henry out of the deal.
He's greedy.
He's greedy and he's a douchebag. And so after he's like, David's like, please, for the love of God, do not mess up this deal. It's going really well. We finally got our first shipment out. It's going to be great. And in the real life story, when they got greenlit on the deal, the government's only legally required to provide you for the first, like, it's called, I think, trade-off or whatever, which is your first, like, order to fulfill. And the order to fulfill was only worth $600,000, and it was a $300 million deal. So they're like, what the heck? What's going on? Are we being played by the U.S. government? But then in reality, after like a week or something or a certain amount of time, they were actually got another one for $53 million. So the government was just seeing what they would do. So then they were able to fulfill both of those orders and go forward with that. So it's just kind of interesting the way all this is interworking. So anyway, Ephraim then tries, it's like, okay, you're right, David. You're right. Go ahead and I'm going to walk away from it as he's going to his office and tearing up the contract. It's like, oh God. So we get to the beginning of the movie where we're introduced and Miles Teller's getting beat the crap out of. And it turns out Albanian gangsters are beating him up and he's in Albania. And who's beating him up, David? And who pulls the gun to his face?
It's Henry.
It's Henry, Bradley Cooper. He pulls a gun on him and he's like, why would you screw me over? Blah, blah, blah. You don't do this. You don't mess with me. In fact, in the real life story, he kept telling Ephraim, like, do not screw over Henry. This guy has so many future connections we can do. This guy's friends with the Prince of Albania or whoever was in charge at the time. He's a friend. He got connections with the government. Imagine what we could do later on. But no, Ephraim refuses to lie down and take it and get screwed over by some random dude, some business partner. So he intentionally burns his bridges and then makes everybody suffer around him. And it's just crazy. So David's getting out of there. He gets beat up by Bradley Cooper's guys and the gangsters. He gets out of there. And so he's packing up his things and the boxing guy's like, hey, when am I going to get paid? And he's like, I thought you've been paid part of it. He's like, I haven't been paid at all for what we've been doing here. And so he's like, well, hey, first thing I'm going to do when I get back is I'm going to get you your money. Never happens, of course. But during this time, like, he goes back to America. He's done with Albania. He's done with Ephraim. He's done with all this. He got, the schnock kicked out of him. He makes good with his girlfriend. He goes back to AY, throws a napkin on Ephraim's table, and with napkin math written all over it, and shows the cut he's going to get from the current, like, company holdings or whatever, or the current deal they're doing with the Afghan deal. So you have this huge argument, this confrontation between him and Ephraim, and he's like, I don't owe you anything. You don't own. You're going to get 0% on this. And then David goes into his office, and sure enough, the contract's missing. Okay, sure, that was smart. So anyway, David then 3 months later, he goes back to doing massage therapy for a whole bunch of rich guys. And then David, I believe we get the Jewish guy, the laundromat dude, who comes up to him after that. And do you remember what happens after that?
Yeah, so basically, the laundromat dude approaches David, saying that Ephraim is really broken up about the situation and wants to make it right, and that he's going to mediate. And so they meet up in the diner, and Ephraim's like, I'll offer you, I think it was $200,000.
Yeah, over the course of 4 years.
Yeah, so it was like $200,000, something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, David is like, that's BS. We had a contract, and the laundromat dude is still trying to, like, you know, sort of play the whole, like, Ephraim's just a good guy kind of thing. He's like, well, you know, there's no evidence of a contract, and you're just like,
you're lucky to get anything on
this. Well, yeah, he wasn't that smarmy about it, but he's just like, yeah, just
take the money.
Take the money kind of a thing. And, you know, that just pisses off David even more. And so David's like, yeah, we forged all the documents. I kept all the stuff, so there's proof of all this and all that. And then he storms out. Yeah.
And so then David gets a call. Some sort of time passes after this, and then he gets a call from the New York Times. And the New York Times is like, hey, I have some people in the Department of Defense saying how there's some shady stuff might be going on at your company you used to work with. You mind commenting? And ladies and gentlemen, this is always a bad sign. When the New York Times or Washington Post calls you up and says, hey, would you like to comment on something? You better watch out, because Big Brother's right around the corner. Because you know what's up, because they're going to use those guys as some independent journalists, you know, to go out to kind of get your word on what's going to happen before they kind of take you down. That's why I really want you, David, we need to sit down and watch The Insider, a Michael Mann film with Gerard Butler and Al Pacino. And it's freaking awesome, because that's what all this is about. It's all about the journalism side of things, big pharma, all this kind of stuff. It's such a good movie. We got to watch it sometime. But anyway, David gets a call from New York Times, goes to an elevator with his girl and his little daughter, and they're going to go for a walk or whatever. Who's on the elevator coming up? Boom, it's Ephraim. Hey, Ephraim, what's going on? And he's like, did you get a call from the New York Times? Yeah. And basically, Ephraim tries to manipulate him, and he's like, I don't know what to do, man. It's going to be hard. I know we can do this together. And like, David totally sees past this, and he's like, you're just manipulating me, whatever. And then gives him a big sock in the mouth. And he's like, God, that felt good. And then like, he's like, yeah, I'm all done. I'm going to go hang out with family. And then he opens the door, and boom, a ton of FBI guys are sitting there waiting for him.
Yeah, they're just like, well, that saves us the trouble of going up there.
That's awesome. There's another quote here. Remember when the part where he's like, I think you should come work for me. Ephraim's like, you should come work for me. And he's like, but I'm against this war. And he's like, this isn't about being about pro-war. This is about being pro-money.
Yeah.
And so there's quite a few good quotes in this film. But anyway, so they get arrested. FBI locks them up. You then get the ending monologue of what happens. So in the movie, it's portrayed as the guy who's the boxing guy who didn't get paid ratted them out to the Department of Defense in the U.S. When in actuality, so like in the movie, it's like he owes him $100,000 altogether, right? Well, in real life, all he had to pay the guy. So the guy, like, what happened in the real life was, and I'll explain it. We're almost done with the movie. I'll explain afterward. So anyway, you find out the boxing guy rats him out to the Department of Defense. And then New York Times calls him. And then it turns out the Jewish guy, the laundromat dude, had a wire on him this whole time when he was the mediator. You could tell he was really ticked off about him losing the money, but he had to keep his cool because he's like, I'm getting wired right now. So the FBI went after the laundromat guy who then wired him and then incriminated himself. Ephraim incriminated himself. So did David. And basically the story goes that Ephraim was in jail for a long time. Nowadays they're both out. They're all living their lives, but he was in jail for I want to say 4 years or something like that.
Yeah, it was something like 4 to 7 years.
4 to 7 years
of jail that Ephraim was sentenced to.
Ephraim pleaded not guilty, but David pleaded guilty.
Yeah,
and
David
only got 7 months of house arrest.
Yeah,
or something like that.
Yeah, it was that was 7 months of house arrest to 7. I think it was 7 years of prison for Ephraim.
Yeah. So we get to the end of the film. We get Ephraim doing his massage therapist thing. He's able to be with his family. I'm sorry, David is doing his massage therapist thing. And then he goes to this client's door and, it's a normal thing. And then he answers the door and it's Bradley Cooper. It's Henry. And he's like, oh, crap. And he looks behind him and, there's no security or anything. There's no guards or any of Henry's cronies. It's just Henry in this apartment. And so he brings him in. He's like, don't worry, I just need to talk to you. Brings him on the couch. And then I can't remember what the first question was. It's not really that important, but David starts asking Henry these questions
what he asks.
What did he? I don't know.
He asked Henry if he knew, because there's a minor subplot when David is leaving Albania, all the craps hit the fan and he's done. So he's on a taxi to the airport, and there's this minor sort of plot about
his driver.
Yeah, his driver's gone missing. His wife, the driver's wife comes up to him and is like, my husband's gone missing. Do you know where he is? And this driver's not a major character or anything, but he's like a charismatic kind of, he's a real nice guy.
Real nice guy. Yeah.
So there's some genuine, there's a few scenes of him driving David around and he just displays genuine warmth and friendliness kind of a thing. So he's a decent guy and he's missing. And I guess in this moment, David remembers him and is like, say, while I was in Albania, my driver went missing. Do you know anything about that? And that's when Henry pulls out a briefcase full of money, and it says,
he's like, here, this is part of my cut from the Afghan deal.
Yeah, this is for you. No more questions.
And then that's how it ends.
Yep.
So that's War Dogs. Some things I want to mention real quick. Things that weren't in the movie. So you ready for David? You got first thing here that I wrote down. It's Ephraim was actually younger than David. In fact, when David started working for Ephraim, David was older and Ephraim was only 18 years old. In fact, David, when recalling the story, says that when he met Ephraim again, after, meeting him in synagogue, being friends with him in high school and all this kind of stuff, he said that when he met him again, he was 18 years old. He was always a little younger than him. In the movie, they reverse it. He's Ephraim's a little older. Or the same, no, sorry, the same age. The same age.
He mentions that even though they're the same age, I've always looked up to him. Yeah.
And so in real life, David was older than Ephraim, and when he first met him again, he's like, "Hey, yo, check it out. Look at my butt." He's like, "What do you do for work now?" And he's like, "I'm kind of doing some deals with the government." He's like, "What kind of deals?" And he's like, "Well, I don't want to brag, but here, let me show you something." So he pulls out his bank account. And he's like, I don't want to brag, but here you go. Totally bragging. And he shows it, and it's $1.8 million in his bank account at 18 years old. It's freaking crazy. So something else was, I think I already mentioned this, but Jonah Hill's portrayal of Ephraim's character was more likable and cuddly. This was the words that the real David Pacos used. And in reality, he was way worse in real life. Such an a-hole, would walk into the office screaming at everybody. He's like, well, I don't pay you guys to sit around. I pay you to work. And just a complete a-hole. But one thing I want to bring up, the Afghan deal. So this is what actually happened. So the Afghan deal was thwarted by the boxing guy. So that's actually true. It's in the movie. But he already had contacts in the Department of Defense that Ephraim actually knew about. And in fact, Ephraim ended up using that to get into contact with the Albanian government, along with Bradley Cooper's character. So after he finds out Bradley Cooper's doing his thing, or excuse me, Henry's doing his thing in real life, he gets the contacts from the boxing guy, goes to the Albanian government, says, hey, what can we do to work this out? Because I think we can work out a better deal than your guy Henry. And so that's how he tries to get around, screw over at Henry. So that's what ends up happening in the background of the movie, as we don't see. So anyway, he then convinces the Albanian government through connections while he's talking with them to make a better deal with another boxing company, or packaging company, I should say, and just let the other guy go. So he fires the other guy, signs a new deal with somebody else, and then the other guy, and so David's like, dude, what the heck are you doing? The boxing guy knows everything. We need to keep him on. He's like, no, we don't. And then he's like, but he could bite us in the rear end later on. He's like, I don't care. I just want him out of here. And he's like, okay, you're stupid, but okay. And so David then goes to the boxing guy. He's like, hey man, what do we owe you? And he's like, just $20,000. Like, I have $20,000 worth of boxes left to package up, and that's all I'll probably need. So all he asks for is 20 grand to be compensated. David goes back to Ephraim, and this is real life. He's like, yo, Ephraim, he just wants 20K. And he's like, I'm not going to give it to him. He's like, why? And he's like, because he's out of this deal, and he's a trash. He's a terrible blah, blah, blah. And he just refuses to give the guy money. So Ephraim's pride screws over this whole company, everybody connected to it, over not paying the boxing guy 20 grand. And it screwed him and everybody out of the $300 million contract. Isn't that crazy? God, it's just, I remember hearing that and I was like, this is insane. Like, holy cow. So anyway, that's all I really have to say about War Dogs. David, you got any final thoughts on the movie? Did you like it?
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was enjoyable. I mean, I'm not going to say it's like one of the greatest movies of all time or anything like that, but it was enjoyable.
And it was an interesting look at something that I don't really think is portrayed a whole lot in a lot of movies, maybe more nowadays. But I find it interesting.
Yeah, definitely. It's unique in that it brings even though it's an over-the-top comedy, it's kind of interesting how it's an over-the-top comedy, but it's also bringing like a realistic, real-world perspective in terms of the story that's happening. Yeah,
so I highly recommend War Dogs. Right now, at the point of recording this podcast, you can only rent it at certain places. I had got it on Amazon, rented it there. When we went to go rent it, it was actually $5 to purchase it, and so I'm like, dang it, Amazon! I guess you're gonna get $1.50.
It was $5 to
purchase it. Yeah, not own, purchase. Excuse me. So yeah, they don't use the term own anymore. I've noticed that.
Yeah,
in some digital stores, maybe Xbox is the only one I can think of, but they just say purchased instead of
because you don't own it.
Because
if Amazon ever decides that they no longer want to host War Dogs on their site, you don't have it anymore.
Moral of the story, kids, don't screw over the U.S. government because they pretty much know everything about you.
And always buy physical media.
All right, David. Let's take a quick break and let's do Mr. Limpet, all right?
All right,
let's go. All righty, David. Let's go into our second film. That's a very unconventional war film, but it's a war film. We have The Incredible Mr. Limpet from 1964, starring Don Knotts, Jack Weston, and Carol Cook. I actually don't remember. I have it written down later, but we'll get to that point. Incredible Mr. Limpet. David, what's your history with this film? Let's start it off with that.
Yeah, so I don't remember most of this movie because the last time I watched it I was a child, and my family had taken a little vacation to Fort Bragg. We stayed on a beachside motel, and it was just a fun family trip to Fort Bragg. But I remember the night that we stayed in the motel, the TV was on as we were going to sleep, and the Incredible Mr. Limpet was on. Yeah, so I'd actually already seen it, but it had been so long, and I probably didn't watch the whole movie either. But I remembered precious little of it. So it was like, aside from the general concept of the movie, this was basically like brand new to me, just because my memory of it was gone.
Yeah. It's funny how some movies are like that, and then you come back to it and you're like, oh, I remember this. So my history with this is interesting. I grew up watching this. We had the DVD, and it was actually a movie my mom loved, and a film my mother loved a lot. And she was the target audience when it came out. Like, she was 5 years old when this released in theaters. So it's like she was definitely the target audience for this. So let's just get right into it. The Incredible Mr. Limpet, directed by Arthur Lubin, and then the animation sequences directed by, and this is just from IMDb, so, take this with a grain of salt. Who knows if it's accurate, but the animation sequences were directed by Gary Chinakwai, Robert McKimson, Howley Pratt, and Bill Titla, or whatever. So apparently that's who they did the animation. Incredible Mr. Limpet's like this live action / animated hybrid movie in the 60s starring Don Knotts as Henry Limpet, this guy who, well, let's just hop right into it.
Basically, to sort of preface this, think of like Mary Poppins or Bedknobs and Broomsticks, but much, much worse.
Much worse. In fact, there's that movie, I was on the IMDb, there's that movie called The Ghost, or Mr. Ghost and the Chicken or something.
The Ghost and Mr. Chicken.
The Ghost and Mr. Chicken, and it sounds like incredibly delightful, and I cannot wait to watch it for our Halloween movies we're going to do next month, David.
Oh, you've never seen The Ghost and Mr. Chicken?
No, I have no idea what it is.
Yeah, it's another
Don Knotts
like
movie?
Don Knotts is like
there's like Apple Dumpling Gang, but that's different.
No,
right?
Don Knotts has like a very like specific type of movie that he does. This one, Incredible Mr. Limpet, is a little less so than that. It has traces of it, but stuff like The Ghost and Mr. Chicken, I think, what is it called? The Shakiest Gun in the West or something like that. And yeah, he basically does these movies where he plays this really timid character who's like afraid of his own shadow and then ends up saving the day.
He was The Reluctant Astronaut is another one that's listed here. And as well as Shaggy Dog and all this other stuff. So, oh yeah, The Absent-Minded Professor. I remember watching that. That was the movie that was Flubber before Flubber existed, basically. That was the movie that Flubber was a remake of.
Was that The Absent-Minded Professor?
Yeah, Absent-Minded Professor, yeah.
Okay.
He makes the Flubber thing, stays up all night, misses his wedding, same thing as
Yes,
Flubber.
yes, that's right, that's right.
Has
okay.
the dude, you've never seen it, but The Happiest Millionaire, which was a musical, I believe, produced by Disney. The main guy in that, who's the dad or whatever, is the Absent-Minded Professor, who's in all the Disney stuff in the 60s, along with Don Knotts.
Yeah.
So, pretty cool stuff. Dude, for some reason, The Incredible Mr. Limpet's not on Max, and it's a Warner Brothers movie. I found it so weird. So we borrowed my mom's DVD. So let me tell you of the experience of The Incredible Mr. Limpet. I love this movie so much. The Incredible Mr. Limpet, David. I see nothing has changed from my childhood, my good sir. I am sitting next to someone with a beard, watching Don Knotts turn into a fish. I don't mean to call my mother out like that, so let's just move right along. Joking aside, this movie starts with a recreated map of Washington, D.C. that is painted with red and blue stripes as the camera pans down, starting at the U.S. Capitol building and then ending at the Pentagon. Before we transition to what's inside the home of the famous Department of War, now known as the Department of Defense, we are greeted with a message saying, Our thanks to the Department of Defense, and especially to the U.S. Navy, without whose authorization this heretofore carefully guarded military secret could not have been told. Very interesting opening. So next we transition to two older looking men walking through the Pentagon and entering a hallway labeled confidential. And then another hallway labeled secret. And then finally a room labeled top secret. These men pull a file. Let's see. These men go to a file cabinet, pull out a file, and go on to discuss something that is locked away inside the file cabinet with a sign that says closed on it. The men discuss the secret file and say they hoped we never have to open it again. The men continue to discuss how naval scientists have desired to find out why porpoises are so smart with almost human, seemingly superhuman capabilities. They believe he might be teaching the porpoises their new special gifts. One of the men remarks that he only knew him until after, with the other remarking the name Henry Limpet. We cut to a doofy and nerdy-looking Don Knotts, Henry Limpet, looking out a window, watching a new U.S. warship cast off for the very first time, saluting the ship as it guides into the harbor. Henry then turns around. He's in a business building where he's working, and all the women are looking at him. Some in curiosity, but most of them seemingly desiring him like a shark to a seal. It's as if all their husbands went off to a war, and he is the only male in the office.
Well,
which is exactly what we have here in this scene. Go, David.
Hold on 1 second. You had the one woman that was clearly like, oh, you're doing such great work, you know. It's a good thing that you didn't get drafted because we really need you. But the other women are looking at him, saluting the boat, and they're laughing their butts off.
Well, yeah, and some of them are like, oh, he's so cute and so stupid. And like some of them are like, oh man, what a hunk. It's
they're
like,
laughing
man,
in derision.
I guess. I don't know. That's not how I took it. I was looking at some of it today and I'm like, man, some of these ladies.
I don't, I think the one woman wanted him.
Yeah, so I definitely agree. So this doofy, skinny, and quite dapper, if I do say so myself, looking gentleman is what the ladies are fawning over? Mr. Limpet sits down and cleans his glasses. He proceeds to drop them on the table and then cannot seem to see where they are. Literally, they're right in front of him. Then one of the ladies sees this and walks over and picks up his glasses for him. This lady, Miss Barnes, seems to be caring for him like a friend. That is not the case! She then proceeds to... Oh, where am I? I lost my spot. Gosh dang it, where was I?
You got lost in the sauce.
I got lost in the sauce. She then proceeds to fish for information to see if he is going onto the military. Going into the military. This takes place in World War II, by the way. He imparts to her that he is 4F classified, meaning he isn't considered for military service. She states, we need more men like you at home, too. He responds with, why? She replies with, well, to give to the blood bank, of course. The conversation continues with Limpet stating how they could get anybody to fill his position at this job. The lady continues to nose her way and then does a doozy. She pulls one of the slickest lines you can do to find out if somebody has a significant other. She asks, I'm sure your wife will be happy to know you'll never be called. His wife, portrayed by Carol Cook, then calls on the phone and tells Limpet that his childhood friend, George Stickle, is in town. The scene ends with Miss Barnes finding a fish inside the water cooler, causing quite a ruckus. The entire office runs over to see what's the matter, and Mr. Limpet then calms Miss Barnes and declares that he's the one that put the fish in there.
Yeah.
Somebody's poisoned the water hole, reminding everybody why this absolute Chad prioritizes his hobby and then women as a close second.
See, that's the thing. That is the thing, is up until the fish thing, you're like, man, is this Chad Don Knotts wooing the office manager or whatever position she had?
Miss Barnes.
And yeah, but then you see, oh yeah, that's my fish in the water cooler there, and the lady runs off like, oh my God. And it's like, yeah, no. Nope. False alarm. No Chad Don Knotts for us.
Dang it. We might get an apple dumpling gang, though, so we'll move on. So Henry Limpet walks home, picking up a few fish along the way at the local pet shop, which his wife specifically told him not to. He arrives home where the lights are turned off, and his friend George, played by Jack Weston, surprises him while hiding behind the front door. George is donned in his Navy attire, showing off to Henry. Henry gives a forlonging look as he desires to be in the war and to give his time to the effort across the pond. But sadly, that isn't the case here. He's stuck at home with a wife who feels neglected by a fish lover of a man. Henry's wife, Bessie, walks in dressed to the hilt with her face dolled up for the special occasion. George is home! It's a miracle! This scene involves George telling Henry how he's been promoted, and him and Bessie try to convince George that he has a problem, which he definitely does, with fish. Henry's not very self-aware and doesn't think he has an issue. In fact, he wants to be a fish! And a song ensues, mistakes are made, and his wife threatens his life and makes Henry choose between the fish or her. The confrontation happens all while George chuckles as he's giving Limpet the side eye while he sips on a cocktail. David, what were your thoughts during this scene?
I was
This scene's something else.
flabbergasted, to say the least. Yeah, this.
What pops up? What pops out of you for this scene?
So yeah, you mentioned earlier that we did 2 films about mental health. I think we should have done 3 films about mental health, because Don Knotts has some serious psychiatric issues that need addressing.
I mean, it's not. I don't know. Have you ever seen Harvey, David, with Jimmy Stewart? Where he has an imaginary friend who is this giant rabbit, and it's invisible to everybody else, but then it's actually real. And everybody tries to put Harvey into, or the rabbit's name is Harvey, and Jimmy Stewart's character is his friend. Have you ever seen that?
No, I haven't seen it.
So, like, I'm not going to say it's like Harvey levels of crazy, but it's borderline, especially around this time, he might get thrown into an insane asylum.
Well, it's crazy in that he's like lamenting that his life is so awful.
Yeah. I want to go to the war.
That is like, oh, I wish I could just be a fish swimming around in the ocean. And it's like, I'm pretty sure your problems stem from the fact that you're obsessed with fish. If you maybe paid attention to your wife just a little bit, she might not be nagging you all the time, and your relationship might not be so strained.
Yeah.
But instead, he's constantly doting on fish. And it's like, I don't understand. He's like got these bizarre ideas that are like, he somehow thinks that living life as a fish in the ocean is somehow going to be a carefree existence, when, it's a well-known fact that the life forms in the ocean face, constant danger and could die at any minute. And here he is, working a comfy office job, and somehow swimming around as a fish is going to be more carefree than that. And then also he spouts off these weird ideas about how we're like descended from fish, and it's like, that doesn't even make sense from like a secular evolutionary perspective, because it's like, just for context.
Yes.
So from a secular evolutionary perspective, the last common ancestor between us and our closest relatives in the animal kingdom, that is chimps and bonobos.
Yeah, bonobos.
Our closest common ancestor with them was like millions of years ago. So millions and millions of years ago, the evolutionary line diverged between, and one line ended up producing humans, and one line ended up producing modern primates like chimps and so forth. And so the last common ancestor between men and fish not only predates that, it predates the existence of mammals entirely.
Yeah.
So there's no possible way you could say that we're descended from fish in any meaningful sense. And yet he somehow believes this. And this is like, you know, this movie was made in the 60s.
Yeah.
Like, yet evolutionary biology wasn't as developed as it is now, but it was pretty darn developed.
Yeah.
Like, Darwin wrote The Origin of Species in the late 1800s.
Yeah.
So evolutionary science is pretty well established by this point.
Yeah.
And he's spouting off nonsense about how we're descended from fish and like all it's going to take is one disaster for humans to disappear, and then the fish are going to once again crawl out of the sea and produce a new race of men. Like these are the kinds of ideas that like start cults. You know? Crazy
stuff. I would like to imagine that just put your hats on for a second. You're in the 40s. You're reading all this stuff in universities. You get a good college education, apparently, and this is before the whole, you know, normalization of the education system for elementary schools established. You know, there's school, but it's not like established nationally. Like the government's not superimposed on it at this point. This is in the 50s, so you have he's probably a student of what's it called, Darwin. He's probably a student of that kind of theory, of evolutionary theory. But then, David, picture this. He's going to universities, he's going to lectures, he's going to all these people that have different crazy ideas about what evolution could also be and branching off of evolution and what could also happen and all this kind of stuff. That it's basically like he goes out and does his own research, in quotes, and is basically like listening to the Joe Rogans of the 40s and all this kind of stuff at lectures and getting all this juicy input from different universities. And he's like obsessed with it. And he's just imagine, man, like it was crazy back then. There was no fact checking, no nothing. You were just doing and reading all these books and everything, and just craziness, man.
Well, that's the thing is
crazy. He's
like, so basically, the people who, you know, quote unquote, do their own research nowadays have a pretty good cause to want to do their own research. And there's a side of the political spectrum which wants to denigrate those people and pass them off as loony conspiracy theorists. This George Limpet guy is basically Henry's. I don't know why I said George.
George is his friend.
Yes, that's right. George is his friend.
Stickle.
Yeah. So this Henry Limpet guy is essentially the kind of conspiracy nut that gets that basically people are strawmanned as today.
He would be 100% a flat earther today.
Yeah,
150%,
and not the cool kind that cool like kind. Is that's, ironic. That believes it ironically.
Not the Jake Paul kind of flat earther.
No, he would be like a real flat earther, like a true believer.
Yeah, he'd be like a Robert Epstein. We didn't land on the moon kind of stuff. Which, do your own research, people. All right, so something else that stands out to me in this scene, specifically in the apartment, is how his wife fawns over George. Like, holy crap, David. This scene, all kinds of cheating behind the limpet. They're doing it, David. Like, they're doing the nasty.
Well, I don't know if they're doing it.
I think so. I'm behind that theory. Not evolution, but behind this theory.
I don't know if they were doing it, but they were.
She is very excited he's back.
They were making the... They were making the preparations for doing it.
Yeah.
Like, they were essentially just waiting for Henry to be taken out of the way somehow. I don't think they had any.
I don't think they had any plans.
They didn't have plans necessarily.
Yeah, they're not like nefarious in any way.
There's no malevolence. But there is this sort of, you get the idea that they're just kind of waiting for this moment when like Limpet's gonna mess up so badly that his wife is just gonna be done with him. Like, it's gonna be a deal breaker and their relationship is gonna be over. It can't continue. and then George is gonna swoop in.
And be the hero, you know. And don't get me wrong, a guy in uniform, very handsome, very demure, as the kids say nowadays. But let me tell you, like,
That's
let
what
me
they
tell
say.
you, the looks that she's given George, the looks that he gives everybody in this scene, and also the one aspect I find great in this is that even though there's like, yeah, they're definitely thinking about it. It's he does genuinely care about George from what I can see. Yeah, he might want to be with his wife. Sure, he loves Bessie, but like, let me be clear. He generally says, "Hey, man, maybe you shouldn't look at that giant bowl of water, you know, in that fish bowl. You should." He says straight up, like, you should definitely like take a look and pay attention to Bessie. Like, you should be better than this, you know?
Yeah.
And they even convince him. They're like, oh, but we could go do this. We could go have a fun time doing this and all that. And he's like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm not. He doesn't want to go out.
Yeah,
you know?
he likes to read his fish books.
And his he has that chart of the evolutionary track of fish too.
Oh,
and he
yeah.
says that, oh man, imagine we should put humans back in the ocean, and then 2 million years later they'll probably come out better than before.
The one thing I was gonna say about George and Bessie is that when George comes over to Henry and Bessie's place, like, he is definitely rizzing up Bessie.
Oh, 100% risen it.
As the kids say.
As the kids say.
She is getting rizzed up. Definitely.
There is so much risk with this man. Let me tell you. And Jack Weston, I've seen this guy in Twilight Zone episodes, especially the character we'll meet later, the captain, who's also been in Twilight Zone episodes. Like, these are awesome actors. I love them. They're great. But man, like, his acting is really great in this. I just love him because, like, there's all those funny looks that he gives and the facial expressions. And there's some sense of endearment to his love for Henry. Like, he loves Henry.
Yeah, he really sells the character.
Yeah, he sells it well.
It's goofy, but he definitely sells the character.
Yeah.
Whereas some of the other acting in this movie is a little more questionable.
Yeah. So let's see. I don't think I have anything else to say. One thing I do want to bring up, David, is the lights were turned off when he got home. Now, that of course could be that George turned them off because he wanted to surprise Henry and not see him.
Yeah.
You know, that makes sense.
That's the
That's the expectation, but the lights were off, and I just want to bring it up because it's a theory.
Like I said.
A Stickle theory.
Like I said, Bessie was getting rizzed up sure, but I don't think they were actually doing it behind
he could be a ladies'
Henry's
man.
back.
He's definitely, he's a Navy guy in the 40s. He's got some panache. He's got some riz, as the kids say. He's definitely a ladies' man for sure. But it's like,
I mean, he might not even be a ladies' man in general.
Yeah.
But he's charismatic for sure.
Yeah, he's charismatic.
But the connection
and Bessie's
that he
and this guy's cool.
Bessie have is definitely a thing. Like, Bessie is him.
She is into George. So, all right. So moving on. Let's see. So the next day. Now, yes, he has to get rid of the fish. He chooses her over the fish. That's cool. He's real sad. The next day, the whole crew head to Coney Island to have a nice, lovely picnic on the boardwalk. Why not the beach? I mean, that's fine, I guess. It isn't crowded at all. That makes sense. It's a little convenient though for the plot at this point. But anyway, I guess that makes sense. So anyway, Limpet looks longingly at the fish in the ocean. Since Bessie made him give away all his pet fish to the pet shop, this guy is losing it, David. He then succumbs to Mother Nature's whirls as a strange purple light shines onto Henry, and then leans over and underneath the railing of the Coney Island boardwalk, getting dangerously close to the edge. He falls in! This nerdy, geeky, dapper mother fish lover dives into that H2O. George and George and Bessie hear the noise and the splash, and George dives right after him. He scours the water not once, but twice, looking for Henry. And during this time, Henry sinks deeper and deeper into the water and transmorgifies into a flippin' fish. George does find Henry, but only as his newly found fishy self. What did you think of this scene, David? And Don Knotts really sells the "I want to be a fish."
Yeah, this scene was the point at which you're like, this scene was the one where I was like, okay, like
it's getting good now.
Like this is beyond just a simple obsession. Limpet is in serious need of psychiatric help at this point. Like he's being hypnotized by watching some fish, swim around in some dirty ass water underneath the boardwalk. It's like, what the heck's going on? And he's like seriously gone. And at this point, like if the magical transformation hadn't taken place, like Limpet would have been dead.
Yes.
Like he would have taken his own life from these fish obsessions. But something intervenes and gives him his wish.
Yeah. And that's never explained, but do we need it explained? Not necessarily. So, David, the first 45 minutes of this film, at this point, this film deals with government espionage, secret government programs, Don Knotts being a total Chad, a man who enjoys his hobby, an unhappy marriage, a childhood friend taking advantage of this unhappy marriage, and his wife, and a man turning into a fish. What a world.
Yeah.
So Henry moseys around as this new version of himself, becoming the incredible Mr. Limpet, or maybe just Mr. Limpet at this point. Hey, he's the same. He's Henry. So he's a fish. He's swimming around, enjoying himself. He soon discovers that being a fish ain't all that great. He meets some other fish that don't speak English. He finds out that predators are a thing. Oh, shoot, a predator. A shark starts following Henry and chasing him into a dark cavern where he meets Krusty the hermit crab, voiced by Paul Frees. "Jumpin' St. Elmo's fire," says Krusty when he bumps into Henry. Soon thereafter, their introductions, Henry discovers that he has a newfound ability. Fighting an octopus, he discovers he's able to give a mighty, rip-roaring roar. Then an echo with such incredible force that goes through the entire Atlantic Ocean. Krusty starts calling him all kinds of stuff, including Flatbush, a nice new nickname for this four-eyed friend. Interesting. What do you think of Krusty, David?
Krusty was something else. It was
Can
like,
we talk? Yeah, you go.
like his characterization was like, I don't even know what to think about it. It was just like prospector,
Yeah.
turned hermit crab.
He's a hermit. So he sounds like a hermit, I guess.
Well, he doesn't sound like a hermit. He sounds like a prospector. It sounds like someone who lives in the mountains.
Yeah. Lives in a shell.
Yeah, except he doesn't live in the mountains. He lives under the ocean because he's a hermit crab. Yeah. that's what I was like. It's just like, it's like he's like a crazy old prospector, but he's a hermit crab.
What does he say? You bumped into my not sensitive place, but you bumped into my. He says something like his private quarters or something. Like
I don't know.
I don't remember, but it's like, oh, interesting. Like, you living in this cavern, or you have your shell in here? Like, I don't know what's happening. Maybe he's taking a nap or something. So, or hibernating.
Well, from what I understand is that little cave that Limpet initially hides from the shark in is kind of like that's Krusty's hidey hole.
Oh, it's his hidey hole.
It's his it's his place to to get away it's his place to hide from predators. And so he's not too happy to see that Limpet is in his space.
Yes. So after the discovery of becoming Banshee from the X-Men, Henry Limpet finds a wrecked ship that Krusty shows him, a sunken vision into the past. Henry then notices that a purple fish caught in a fishing line. He somehow sees this from 1,500 feet deep while on the ocean floor. But he then saves this new purple fish by cutting the fishing line, and we cut back to the ship on the surface that's fishing this lady. And this Australian fisherman falls backwards onto the boat and remarks, "They're trying to save each other."
Yeah, that was the more remarkable part about it. It was like, how does a fisherman see this? I mean, Limpet, he's a fish with glasses, so his vision's pretty impeccable, right?
Really, really good.
And they're already underwater.
Yeah.
So how does the fisherman see that one fish is trying to save the other fish?
And also, it seemed like they were like several dozen feet deep. But in the clip on the surface, it's like flapping around or whatever, the stock footage, and the fish is supposedly on the surface. I don't know. It's just silly. And then like his whole the way he delivers that line, "They're trying to save each other." I don't know. That's not an Australian accent, but it was pretty gold.
Yeah, that whatever that accent was, it was
It was something else.
Yeah.
Not good. Let's see where I lost my spot. Yeah, they're trying to save each other. Limpet then meets Ladyfish, voiced by Elizabeth McRae. She starts thanking him by seducing Henry, which, cause she wants to get it on. She swims around him like a shark drawn to blood, David. Henry being all bashful and cute. Well, golly. Henry first wants to know her name. This girl fish doesn't know what a name is. She motions him and tells him to follow her to the spawning ground. Henry is appalled by this statement before we see if he follows her. But we cut. We cut, David, to Bessie showing off her new dress to George. And George's face is dumbfounded and a little scared. And that fear turns into Riz as he and Bessie are about to go out on a hot date.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, what do you think of Miss Ladyfish here, David?
Yeah, this is really interesting because this is like supposed to be like a family movie, right?
Yeah.
And you have like this like bizarre, just like blunt treatment of the realities of animals just getting it on.
There's not much to do as an animal.
Yeah, it's like this. This is supposed to be a family movie, so you'd think they would like kind of humanize the fish romance a little bit.
Yeah,
but no, it's like
no Disneyfy whatsoever.
Yeah, it's like Ladyfish wants to take Limpet to the spawning grounds. They're gonna have sex, baby.
Fish sex.
And
oh gosh.
And when Limpet protests, because of course having the mind of a man,
very improper, yeah.
Having the mind of a man, he still has his human morals. And it's like, we can't just do this, there's steps.
What's your name? What's your name?
Yeah, there's some steps you gotta go through, and she's just like, what?
What?
She doesn't understand at all.
Yeah.
She's just like, I just want to go to the spawning grounds.
Maybe the Australian guy, David, on the top was like, "What's your name?" Because he's Australian, What's your name?
Oh my God.
Ezekiel. Anyway, so Henry convinces Ladyfish not to go to the spawning grounds, even after saving her again from a roaming barracuda. Ladyfish decides to leave him, seemingly never to be seen again. So, oh well, that's that. Now to get to the action of the film. After some moping around, Henry starts roaring. Roar, roar, like all echo location all around the ocean. He's upset that Ladyfish is gone. He realizes he's missed out on life. He leaves Krusty in the shipwreckage, and Krusty's fine there. He wants to be there safe. His roar is then picked up by a Nazi U-boat, David. After some time, Henry comes into contact with a U.S. warship. He communicates with the ship and tells them there is a U-boat that's in the water. He then, unintentionally, manipulates the ship to go full steam ahead, pull left rudder. He then is able to guide the warship to the U-boat and eventually blow it up with an oil pile that bubbles to the surface. We then cut to a scene where we have a back and forth conversation between the incredible Mr. Limpet and the Captain Harlock, played by Andrew Duggan. This conversation involves getting George Stickle out to the warship and discuss Henry's plan for being a part of the Navy to help with the war effort. So, here we go, David. Get into the subplot, or The main plot?
Yes, the main plot.
The main A-B plot. Something. That's the B plot of the movie. The first one is, I want to be a fish. Right?
Well, this is like we're getting into the, I would say that this is what you would call the third act.
This is the third act. Okay, yes.
Yeah.
And now it's the second act. Once we get into the German stuff, then I think that's the third act. But we'll continue on. So George is brought out there, long story short, he's brought out there to the meeting place where Henry convinces George that he won't help the Navy unless he, George, is made the representative for Henry, whose goal is to use his newfound autistic scream to assist the Navy to get across the pond over to Europe and fend off them German U-boats in the Atlantic and fight the war against the Axis powers. From the movie gets going. We go from the War Council in the U.S. debating whether using a fish as a weapon is ethical or that we even believe this is real. George being his liaison, who is very scared when he discovers Henry is alive. Like, this guy is not only scared that he might be alive, but then he finds out he's a fish, and then he's really scared. So, you know why, David? You know why he's scared? Because he's with Bessie now. That's why he's scared. So, the War Council approves him. A new department/group is formed with even a new fish logo. And we have the U.S. Navy utilizing Mr. Limpet's abilities effectively against the Nazis. Henry convincing the Navy as well to give him payment and commission for his work, which is really smart, as a fish and as being a secret weapon. And he's sending that money to Bessie. And just as things are going well, David, German disaster strikes. So there's a lot that happens at this part. I kind of condensed it here, but what do you think of the War Council, George being a real scared fella, and Bessie being like, wait, why is this money coming to me?
Yeah, I don't really have any thoughts specifically on that part of it. I thought it was the little... I thought the scene where they're having the meeting and, you know, the big admiral guy is talking to everyone else about this big old convoy they're going to send across the Atlantic.
That's after this. But yeah, you keep going.
Because you mentioned mentioned the pay.
Yeah, the pay.
And the commission.
Right. Never mind.
Yeah. So there he's, giving them the spiel, the secret weapon's going to lead them. And, Harlock and the rear admiral who, initially brokers this sort of secret weapon deal with the top brass are having this little side conversation about how now Limpet wants to get paid and he wants an officer's commission.
Which is, I think it's so funny that stuff like this is in this like kids film.
Yeah.
It's like, I want some money to send to Bessie. And it's
and this rear admiral guy's like, he's like, he doesn't like the pay aspect, but he's like, okay, whatever. But then when he hears how Limpet wants an officer's commission, he wants to be commissioned as a lieutenant. He's like, no way, not at all. And then you have the top admiral guy coming over who's like, well, it's kind of hard to have two meetings at once. Since you won't join mine, mind if I join yours?
It's so great.
And then,
I love this whole scene. Oh
and so he is has to be let in on the news that the secret weapon wants to get paid and the secret weapon wants an officer's commission, and but he doesn't know that Henry Limpet is a fish, so he doesn't know how ridiculous that sounds. So he's just like, the secret weapon wants to get paid and he wants to get commission. Well, then just go do it.
He's like ready for the biggest push of the war. And then like they get the convoy going and everything. So, but as we're getting the convoy going, David, Cue Rammstein, man, because we have the Germans finally figuring out what the heck's been going on. Mr.
yeah.
Limpet, Machaiger! Craziness ensues as the Germans create a homing device to track onto Limpet's signal. Also, the whole scene, David, I found, so I was watching on YouTube again, and I turned on the subtitles. They're not speaking German. They're speaking Jinglish.
Oh yeah, they are.
They are. And it's like, the subtitles are it's just I don't have it up right here, but it's like ridiculous, and it's like,
well, yeah,
they're speaking like half English and German, and it's like totally it's so funny. And they're the Nazi like scientist lab and everything, and they're the homing device like Das Limpet.
Yeah, it's like what I could understand of the German part was like, yeah, I definitely heard that, but I was really bummed that there were no subtitles on the DVD.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I wanted to hear exactly what they were saying and not just snippets of it.
Yeah. And right after this German part, our DVD copy actually skipped and it froze on the TV. And we're like, what? No. So we tried a couple things and we eventually David and all the beauty that he provides and information he does in his research, he found not only the Starship Troopers anime on YouTube for free, but freaking the incredible Mr. Limpet right now is free on YouTube. And so we just go ahead and finish it on YouTube.
And honestly, it looked a little better, sounded a little better too on YouTube.
Yeah, it sounded way better. I think the picture quality was almost on par actually with the compression on YouTube and the DVD, which is surprising to say. I think maybe the DVD was like it's not 480p. It's definitely like maybe 546 something.
No. It would have been 480p because that was the maximum resolution for a DVD.
No, they've snuck on stuff like 540p stuff and a little bit higher onto DVDs just in terms of the space, but you can't see that high because you're limited to the aux stuff like that.
There's no way though that they put out a 540p Mr. Limpet. On DVD. There's no way that they did that.
And you know what? I didn't really expect us to... I never knew that sentence existed in the human language, but the 540p version of the incredible Mr. Limpet, you could probably find it on YouTube.
If you find it somewhere, send it to us.
If you want a pixel count, email us at snarpfanglepod@gmail.com.
There you go. But yeah, no, the YouTube version was actual, what you would call...
Great.
Not full HD, but it was HD. It was 720p.
It's definitely 720, yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
So it was definitely higher resolution, better picture quality, and
And the Jinglish parts were actually subtitled. Surprisingly.
Yeah, which I never found that out because when we watched it together, we had already passed that part.
Yeah, so they say like stuff like Das Limpet, and then like the answer to Das Limpet, and then they open the door with the Throom Zum Boom.
Oh yeah,
the first super secret weapon.
Yeah, I heard that part. Yeah. It's like das super secret weapon. It's like that's not German.
Yeah, and it's like to blitz das amerikanische underwater schneis. Just so great. So anyway, so the whole U.S. is like, with the secret weapon, we must send a convoy across the pond. And we're going to get Europe back on its feet, baby. So they go ahead and do this. All the actors who portray all these generals are so great. They're so funny. And they're just eating it up. And on the way over to Europe, Mr. Limpet's like, oh, man, I'm going to be, I can't wait to tell Bessie about this. Not bad for a 4F fish. And then he starts to fantasize about his reward and the fame he's going to get from this act of service.
Oh, yeah.
And then we cut to like him in a uniform, animated uniform. And then it transitions into Don Knotts live action pretending to walk around with fireworks in the background and a song's playing. And it's just really great. In fact, Don Knotts kind of looks like a Blitzkrieg soldier, man. Like he looks like he belongs in World War II.
Yeah, he looks like he's sporting some kind of weird like Prussian military uniform from the late 1800s. And he's talking at a stand
and he's shaking his fist.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the portrayal of Joseph Goebbels in Inglorious Bastards. Because if I remember correctly, in Inglorious Bastards, they have Joseph Goebbels wearing round glasses, and I was like, and it was that kind of look that was like, he looks like a Nazi.
He looks like a Nazi.
Which I was a little disappointed because I looked up, Google image searched the actual Joseph Goebbels, and he didn't wear glasses. So it was not a real life connection. It was just reminded me of I think it was Inglourious Bastards, yeah, where Joseph Goebbels wears glasses.
I think so. I would take your word for it. So during this wonderful montage of animation, Mr. Limpet and Don Knotts portraying Mr. Limpet walking around in a uniform with his Yankee Doodle dandy and all this kind of stuff. We then, for some random reason, cut to a stealth bomber flying through the air, and then which transitions into a stingray or manta ray just moseying around the ocean, and then just, I'm just going to crash into Mr. Limpet, and kaboom, just knocks him down, as well as his glasses off his head. And Mr. Limpet floats down to the bottom of the ocean. He's like, my glasses! I can't see without my glasses! I'm going to lose the convoy. And at this point, Ladyfish comes back and finds Rusty at the ship. And she's like, oh, where is he? And she's like, you still love her? And love him? And she's like, yeah, I do. And then he's just like, okay. And so she goes and finds him. You come back to the Germans. The Germans are like, Das Limpet, and puts a thing on the map that says Das Limpet, a giant badge.
Yeah, it's like a little like stick-on 2D version of the weird like homing ball thing they had in the laboratory.
It's like, so like Ladyfish goes, looks for him, finally finds him, bring him back to the ship away from the convoy. And then Krusty hops on him and is like, well, let's go fight this war, boy. I'll be your eyes. And Krusty hops on him and kind of just guides Limpet through this whole like battle that ensues. And so Mr. Limpet uses his roar, and then the ships are able to echolocate the German U-boats and save the day from there.
Yeah,
so,
he basically he basically turns the Germans' anti-Limpet system that they've developed into their doom, because he exploits the fact that all their torpedoes are tuned to track his roars, and with Krusty's help, leads the torpedoes back into the submarines that fired them.
Yeah, I remember at this moment we were watching this the other night, and like I then look up from my computer, or I don't even have my computer out. I think at that moment I just look up and I'm like, wait, what happened? I was like looking at my phone and like they win, and I'm like, what happened? What's going on? And it's like, and then like you see like, oh, they won. The Allied Sea Forces are a success, and Secret Sea Weapon defeats the Nazis, and then Krusty says, I'm going to retire. You have fun. I'm going to go back to my civvies. And then Mr. Limpet goes along with Ladyfish, and he's like, so long, Flatbush. Because he calls him Flatbush, because was that the street he lives on or something? Or
I believe that's the town he was from.
Yeah. So, David, the look. The look.
The look.
Do you remember the look that Mr. Limpet gives Ladyfish? The side eye?
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to see what he says here. He says, oh, yeah. She's like, there's so few of us.
Yeah. He gives him a look.
He's like, well, there won't be for long.
Yeah.
And so then they go off somewhere.
They go.
They go to the spawning ground.
Yeah, they go to the spawning ground.
Oh, wait, no. Before that, they get stopped at the boardwalk because Bessie shows up to the boardwalk because George finally told her
that's right, yeah.
that George Stickle told Bessie that he's alive, because she's like, a check for me? He's alive? Oh, you don't take him. Oh, you take him to me this second. George, this is something very fishy about all this, because she don't know he's alive. She don't know he's a fish. And the general's a funny quote. I remember the general saying, it's like, it's very simple. We reverse the process.
Oh, yeah. That was, yeah. The the rear admiral guy's like bringing to the top admiral guy, like, oh yeah, the secret weapon has a wife, and he wants to, she's demanding that we turn him back into a man. And the top admiral's guys, well, just reverse the process. As if, like, somehow it was the U.S. military that turned him into a fish or something. It's like, what? Okay,
guys. So anyway, you have Bessie, who's at the boardwalk dressed in all black with George. And then you have Mr. Limpet trying to go to the surface, but Ladyfish is like, no, you're my man now. You come back right down here to the water and let's go get it on.
Well, no, she's supportive.
Is she?
No, she's supportive, but she's impatient.
She's impatient, okay.
Because she says the water's really cold.
Oh, okay.
And so she's tugging on him. She wants to go because the water's chilly, and she wants to leave the chilly waters and go to the much warmer waters of the spawning grounds. But she's supportive. She lets Limpet she lets Limpet say his goodbyes. And Bessie reaches into her purse and is like, I've got something for you. And before he even comes out, it's like, oh, it's his glasses. Let me guess, it's his glasses. And lo and behold, it's his glasses.
And it's real glasses, and the next shot, boom, animated.
Yep.
It's great. So from here, George gives him a salute, and he goes back into the water with Ladyfish. We then transition back to the beginning of the movie, where those two older-looking fellows are talking about the secret weapon. It turns out it was George and his Captain Harlock that were in charge of the whole operation with very white hair.
Yeah, I thought it was really funny. They just they put white color in their hair to make them they're old now.
Yeah. And it's like, and he's like, I thought that was it. Bessie and I have been happy all these years.
Yep.
George is like,
and they never say it outright.
But
you know it's happening until the very end. It's like, oh, Bessie and I have been happy all these years. It's like, we knew this was happening.
Yeah.
Like, this is not revelation.
Yeah. Come on, man. It's the well-known secret over here. So apparently they're having issues because the naval scientists of the Navy want to study these porpoises or dolphins because they found out that they could have human-like or superhuman-like capabilities, and they want to know why. And so these two fish lovers go to the Mr. Limpet file, and they're like, he's got to be teaching them dolphins how to talk.
Yeah, well, they're called back because the military suspects that these porpoises are learning something, and they're like, well, if they're learning whatever they're learning, they don't really specify, but whatever they're learning, they suspect that, oh, it must be the secret weapon who's teaching them. And so the two people who were in charge of the secret weapon got to get called back
for one last mission. So they go out and they take the old fleet admiral with them, and he goes out and they're on the ocean somewhere, probably where they were. I think it was where they originally were talking to Henry in the beginning when this all started. They're in a raft out there. The fleet admiral has a very French flag colored clipboard, and I don't know why.
I'm assuming it's just supposed to be red, white, and blue colored.
Yeah, but it's the French flag, man.
Well,
I don't know why.
I don't think it's the French flag on purpose. I think it was the French flag accidentally.
Yeah.
I think it was just a red, white,
and blue.
It was a red, white, and blue clipboard, and they probably didn't realize at first that it looked like the French flag, although I'm assuming that somebody must have noticed at some point.
Yeah. So anyway, they call out with their little speaker device they have in the water that they've been using throughout the movie. And finally, they're like, yo, Henry, we need to contact you. And they give him a promotion. They give him is it Commodore or something? Or I don't know. They give him a promotion of some kind or offer it to him. Yeah. And then you hear a roar and they look down in the ocean, and then the song plays, Dave, and it's Henry Limpet. America owes you everything.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, your name will live forever.
I was like, oh my God.
Like, oh my God. And then the movie ends. And with
Yeah.
the font of every Disney 60s film at the end of it. So that is the incredible Mr. Limpet. David, I must say,
It had it all.
it had love, romance, war, fighting, bickering, losing a loved one, getting them back.
You know, the only thing it was missing is when they said that it was time for one last mission.
Yeah.
They needed to have Danny Glover come in and be like, I'm getting too old for this shit. Of course, Danny Glover was, not old enough.
Probably 10 years old.
Yeah, not old enough to perform said role, but in hindsight, it's what they should have included.
Yeah, definitely. Most definitely. And this movie was fine. It's an enjoyable little...
Fine I wouldn't say fine in terms of... I wouldn't even
call it unoffensive. It's very offensive to fish.
Yeah, it's offensive to...
marriage counselors.
To movies in general. Yeah. It's like, this is not what I would call a good film.
No,
not at all. But it's very entertaining nonetheless. If you get a chance, for all those out there who are wondering if they should watch The Incredible Mr. Limpet or not, I would give it a go. Yes. But definitely conscript a friend to watch it along with you. That I think is where you can really have fun with this movie. I don't think you would have as much fun just watching it by yourself because it's awful. It's truly awful.
There are much better Don Knotts movies to watch versus this one. Like, this one's fine. And what was I looking at? I think it was the IMDb description that said, loved among baby boomers, this film stars Don Knotts.
Oh yeah, it was like a cult film among baby boomers. I mean, I guess your mom is representative of all baby boomers now, I guess.
I guess.
Because she's literally the first person I've ever even heard of who likes this movie.
Yeah, she loves it. She grew up watching it, and she showed it to us when we were kids, and it holds, I guess, a place in my heart, but not
a good place.
It's in a dark, cold, nasty place, and I don't want to look at it anymore. No. It's a completely offensive fish flipping movie, is what I would say. But it's you got to have people to watch it with. But dude, I'm in the YouTube comments right now since it's free on YouTube, and I'm like, there's every other comment's like, I'm a veteran and I loved to watch this film when I was a kid, and I'm a baby boomer, and they like, oh, I watched this with my grandma growing up and all this stuff, and it's like,
dang,
yeah, like I'm 60. One of the comments says it says legit this. It says I'm 62 and this was my favorite movies when I was a little girl. I'm like, that's exactly who would watch this.
I guess IMDb wasn't lying.
Yeah, 63 and still remember this great movie. Thanks.
So yeah, it is a.
This and The Ghost and Mr. Chicken are my two favorite films. Like,
oh my God, what kind of person holds as their two favorite films, The Ghost and Mr. Chicken and this?
Oh, it says here, somebody wrote, interesting that 18 years after World War II, George Stickle, played by Jack Weston, was still only a lieutenant when Harlock, Andrew Duggan, had been promoted all the way to admiral. Okay. So, oh my God. Last thing I'll say, the last comment I'll read here is, Mr. Limpet's roar howl is my ringtone. Okay, well, that's enough Mr. Limpet for one day.
That's enough internet for
That's for enough internet for today. Oh my God. Man. So, overall, I think we found some two very excellent choices for unconventional war films. And,
very unconventional.
Very unconventional. And I hope you, audience, enjoyed it as much as we did watching it and talking about it. So, hope you have a wonderful day. Take care, Fangles. And, Snarp Fangle on.
Bye-bye now.